Hey, third grade, ready for your art lesson. For the last few weeks, we've been looking at frogs. Last week we looked on how to draw the glass frog. This week we're going to look at two of the frogs, the African bullfrog and the Smokey jungle frog. I'm going to go into a little bit more depth with how to draw one and practice how to color it. Last week we didn't worry about coloring the glass frog because I wanted us to look once more at how to draw the frogs. This week we'll have the African bullfrog or the Smokey jungle frog. You will get to pick one. So let's take a look at the African bullfrog. This guy's pretty big and he's got a lot of interesting colors around him. You can also see that he has this very interesting streak, almost a solid line down his back. They're also very big, especially compared to the glass frog. And then we've got the Smokey jungle frog. Now, I don't know why it's called Smokey, but I would imagine it has something to do with the kind of smoky color, kind of dark color it has around it. I would also like to point out that no, they don't normally have red eyes. That's just the flash from the camera. So, you're going to pick between one of these two pictures. We've got the African bullfrog or the Smokey jungle frog. And you get to pick which one you want to work on drawing. I'm going to leave this up for a moment, and if you need to see the picture, now's a good place to pause it for the Smokey jungle frog. Or for the African bullfrog. I'm going to be working with the African bullfrog. So I'm going to get my sketchbook. I'm going to make sure that I've got my pencil. And I'm going to actually pull him back up again. No, I'll keep him right there. Because let's talk about some of those colors that we see with our African bullfrog. I see a lot of greens. I see there's a darker green. I see that there's a light green. There's even a yellow color with him. There's a little bit of orange for his eyes. Let's see, where's my orange? Oh, it's on the other table. So I've got some orange for him, and there's also some little spots that have brown. So now that I've looked at him and I've decided that those are the colors I'm going to need, I'll put the rest of mine back up and I'll keep these colors out. They're going to be the second part. Next, I'm going to look at drawing him. Remember, we're going to go by looking at shapes on these guys. So this is kind of easy. What's his first big shape when you see him? Personally, this guy just looks to me like a great big circle. So I'm going to draw a pretty big circle first. So, and if you can see the mouse that's in the title screen, that's pretty much going to be all of this area right now. So then I see that his head, well, let me start with his eyes. He's got one circle of an eye, and then he's got another circle, but it's not going to be the whole eye. I'm going to make, it's got kind of a half circle, and I'm going to erase this part because those were mistakes. And also, I don't see his entire eye on that side. You only see the part of the bulb, or the round part of the eye. So I'm going to erase that, and I don't see that circle going through his head. So I'm going to erase that part too. And hey, it's already starting to look like our giant friend, the African bullfrog. So now let's add some little details. I need to make his legs. So he's got one of those, he's got one leg down here, and he's got a bigger part of his leg. And then I can see a little bit of his foot back there. And then let's look at his back leg. This is going to be a little bit stranger, I understand. So this is still going to be his back leg, and I'm still going to draw it with an oval. And then he's got another part of his leg back there, and we don't even see his other leg because he's so big. So let's look at some other places that we need to erase some lines. I don't need all of these lines right here. So I don't need this back part because his leg is actually over his body a little bit. And I can see his knee, the top part of his knee, more than I can the bottom part. So I'm going to keep that. I'm going to keep that. Now, hand buttons moment. And we don't see those two parts right there. So his leg right here is a little bit more like that, and he's got a, and I won't see this line inside of it. So now that I have my shapes down, let's look at adding some details. This, and again, I'm sorry if you can't see it very well, look at the screen for the mouse. This part of his body, which I'm gonna, right here, is not a perfect circle. It's actually kind of a diagonal, and then it comes up to this circle. So I'm going to erase that part and that part. And he's got a little bit of his head that overlaps his neck back there, just a little bit. Actually, not quite that much. Now, let's look at his mouth and his face. He's got his eye, which we have part of right here, but he's also got this eyelid coming over it. And I'm going to erase some of my scratchy lines. There you go. Make them dark. I can make those dark because that's also part of his eyes. And then let's talk about his face. He's got one little nose right there. My guy looks a little angry, but that's okay. I mean, and then I'm going to draw, he's got that line of his mouth going back kind of far, actually. And he's got this, like, the bottom part of his mouth. And he's got this, I don't know what that is. It kind of looks like his cheek is right there. So I'm going to leave that. And then underneath his jaw, that's that pouch that blows out. So we're actually going to make that a little bit bigger. Right now this is the cutest looking African bullfrog I've ever seen. And then I'm going to cut, there's his arm, there's his leg. Now part of his foot is being covered up by that branch. So I can draw the leaf there. I'm going to start to draw. I can see just a little bit of one of his toes coming through. And on the other paw, other foot, you can see one toe there, and then another toe, and another. It's kind of a. So let's make him look. That's a little bit more like a frog. And let's skip back here to his back leg because it doesn't look that clean in the picture. African bullfrog is all covered in dirt and he's got a lot of loose skin back there. So I'm going to actually erase some of this. And it's a little hard to see, but he's got toes tucked up underneath him. So there's one of his toes too. I'm going to get rid of that little so we've got the basic of our African, or I've got the basic of the African bullfrog drawn. Next, I need to look at his patterns. So before I do anything else, I'm going to take my light green because if you look at him, he is light green almost all over. So I'm going to do a quick all right, so I just did a quick light green over his whole body because underneath it all he is a pretty consistent light green. But this is where we start to add in details. He's not all one shade of light green. There are going to be parts of it where we need to make darker light green. So what I'm going to do is, especially in these spots where if the light's coming from up here, shadows are going to be underneath him, I'm going to take my green and I'm going to color those in a little bit darker. And that shows me that that's a part of his body that is round because the light is coming down underneath his, or I'm sorry, the shadows are coming, are underneath it because the light's coming down on him. And he's going to have darker underneath that. He's going to have a little bit of darkness around the bottom of his eyes there. And this is just a dark, I mean, this is, again, just our light green. We're not even doing the dark green yet. I'm just pressing down harder when I use this light green. And he already looks a little bit more 3D. Now, I see some parts of him that are actually yellow, and it looks like it's kind of on his stomach. So I'm going to take my yellow, and I'm going to color over it and add those yellow spots. And again, this is just a way to make him look a little bit more realistic, and he's kind of going along his stomach down there too. And coloring the yellow on top of the green kind of mixes it together, makes it this interesting yellow-green. Now, I think this line up on top of his head is also kind of yellow, so I'm going to make that up there. Get started with that. I'm going to work on his eye real quick because it's the only part of his body that is really orange. And, of course, he's got the inside is dark. So I'm going to go through and make that little nose, nostrils. So now we've got his dark parts to do. That's where my dark green is going to come into play. And I know he's got a lot of splotches, but I'm going to try and get some of the bigger ones. Like he's got this one around his, again, I don't know if it's a cheek or what, but it looks like it's a part of his body. So I've got that. Then he's got kind of one coming down under his eye. And these are not perfectly shaped circles. Right, really should make that a little bit more wobbly around the edges. And that one has come down to his nose and down over on this side, kind of goes up to his, and there's a little bit up on top of that. I'm going to color them in. So I'm going to keep going with my splotches. I want you to keep watching. Alright, and the last thing we're going to do is we're going to actually use brown. This is not black, this is brown. And I'm going to go along and I'm going to make some of these, because he's kind of got these brown outsides, like the very edges of these are brown instead of just dark green. So I want to go through and I'm going to color just on the outsides of some of these spots. All right, so that is my African bullfrog. I will suggest that you try using color pencil if you can, but remember today we are practicing and drawing and coloring either the African bullfrog or the Smokey jungle frog. Coloring the frog should take you longer than drawing the frog. I will say that. So pick one and get started.